TC. Adam is not with us on this episode. This is a special episode that we're doing. He is not with us today because he is in the middle of campaigning still, running for the principal officer of our local 948. That being said, we have recently run into somebody running a campaign up and down the state, as I understand. And it kind of goes back to our last video that we made recently, breaking down the new tentative agreement, the new contract they want to put in place, and what Adam's and my thoughts were on the different areas of that contract. And there were a couple that concerned us. That being said, we're anxious to interview her today. Her name is Colleen. Colleen, thank you for coming on. Let's start, Colleen, with a little bit about who you are and what it is you're looking to do.
Hey, yeah, I'm really excited to be on today. My name is Colleen. Like you said, I work at the Oakland Airport, part of Local 70, and I work on the ramp. So we are pulling ULDs on and off the planes. A lot of us, we're the sum of our parts, so people are doing different things. Some are operating special machinery. We have tug drivers, people working inside the plane, people on the deck, unloading feeder trailers as well. So it kind of feels like the hustle and bustle of like a restaurant floor, which is the industry I am coming from. So I've only been at UPS for a year, but I've worked 15 years in the restaurant industry, and I still do, because we all know that since it is a part-time job at UPS, all of us have 2 or 3 other jobs. That's how it goes. And I come from a working class family and been doing physical labor since I was 14. So I'm no stranger to that. But I also am getting older, and I need a pension plan and benefits and some health insurance that you don't normally get from from the restaurant industry. So I needed to make a pivot, and I applied to UPS. And I knew that I could handle it, and it seemed comparable. And, I was very social when I first joined. It didn't take so long to start talking to long-timers and building relationships and gaining respect and realizing what was really going on underneath all the surface. Hearing things about how common wage theft is, how people weren't really seeing raises, the wage cuts that happened in the previous year, seeing that injuries are completely discarded. Everybody has to bootstrap it because workers' comp isn't enough. Vacations, times being botched, like seniority not being honored and being violated. You name it. Harassment from supervisors, seeing how much of a joke, basically seeing that the workers really run this show here, which, based on my life experiences so far, I was not shocked to see that at all. But, I quickly was seeing that there were problems with how things were being run, and I knew as well that, okay, we're under the Teamsters. We have this union, this structure that is supposed to be a way that we can push things forward from below. And this is my first time working for a union, but that was also part of the reason why I did want to apply. And I sort of jumped like full feet in right from the beginning. There were some new hires kind of during my time that had gotten terminated. I've seen layoffs and speed ups happen. And so I just started becoming really engaged in going to union meetings along with some of my coworkers. And then obviously this potential strike lead up has been a huge public thing. So a group of us from different locations within the NorCal region had been sort of regularly communicating about strike prep. And that was sort of like our big focus, going out the gates, talking about histories of strikes, why it's important, what our leverage is, like demystifying sort of all these anti-strike sentiments that had been really kind of shoved down our throats. Basically that there's way more bad to come from strikes than there is to be good. And obviously not negating that there has been a bloody history with strikes, and that it's definitely people go under a lot of stress and emotional and physical fatigue. But we also do have strike benefits. We can come together. It's no walk in the park, but historically, a lot of gains have been made through striking. And we know that we have much more potential to reach our demands by withholding our labor and having UPS actually feel the pain of losing billions of dollars than what can be accomplished at the bargaining table through shaking hands and trying to make an inherently antagonistic relationship between the workers and the company, trying to reach some harmony through like peaceful negotiations. And I know that, we were given this very like militant theatrics by Sean O'Brien in our presidency, and kind of all this like real like tough language throughout all of it. But we also did have things where it was closed door bargaining. So it's very easy to say that like we stormed out of bargaining and we're waiting for we walked out because their offer was so insulting. But then it seems pretty reasonable to reach the conclusion that, in the 2 weeks where all of us were doing these practice pickets and there was no negotiating going on, the fact that it was reached within 2 hours when they returned to the tables, our officials wouldn't have gone if they didn't already know what was being offered, and the fact that it was reached that quickly. And I think ultimately there is a class interest between the politicians, between the CEOs, and between our union officials, where they all are sort of scratching each other's back a bit. And I think, it was calculated for this strike to be capped and for it to never happen. And so, some of us were kind of thinking about this throughout the final few weeks, because it really was like, are we gonna go on strike, or are they gonna sneak something in for us to vote on? And we knew that if that was going to be the case, they were going to be pushing hard for us to vote yes. We knew this, and that is what the situation we're in right now. And basically, as soon as the TA was released and we saw what was on it, and we knew that this was not going to cut it, kind of very quickly started reaching out to all the other UPSers we know, seeing who wanted to make a stand. And that is when, Teamsters Mobilized, we really became sort of the center of this no vote movement, and hit the ground running. Had a statement pretty much ready to go right away. We're planning webinars to make our argument and case before the IBT could even present theirs. Started flyering immediately on our shop level, and trying to spread word to all these other barns, because Teamsters Mobilize is made up of UPSers, Teamsters from the West, the East, the Southern states, also Midwest, and we actually cover kind of quite a bit of ground. So that's that. And basically, I think in essence, like, I know myself and other workers out there are willing to turn down a contractor, or even outside of contract years, fight for what we see is wrong. If any of our brothers and sisters make a claim that, like, okay, this particular thing is causing me all this stress, I'm being harassed, this isn't going to cut it, like, what have you. The whole point of being in a union is an injury to one is an injury to all. And that has been the attitude that I've been approaching this whole entire year with. And I know I'm not alone, because I have been actively organizing with other UPSers. And that's what it's about. And I think, honestly, we are not going to half-ass this vote no campaign. So that does mean that we're going to be loud and we're going to be public and we're going to give it a fighting chance. How are you supposed to have a no vote campaign and then just sit back and not promote it at all? You know, if people are sort of on the fence, they need to know that there's a group that is really pursuing this and that there's other UPSers who really want to seize this opening. Uh, so that's sort of the premise, and yeah.
So, what would you say are the biggest holes for you and for the group you've kind of been part of in
Mm-hmm.
this campaign?
Yeah, I think, there are many holes, and I think there's concerns from UPSers across all classifications. And I know you guys on your breakdown spoke a lot about the pensions. So I'm going to kind of not focus on that today, but I do think it is definitely a big reason why people are voting no, and I would agree with that. But I thought it would be good, and it's time sensitive to talk about the MRAs because, as all UPSers know, we are getting mass texts from the IBT. They're spending our dues and resources and monies to issue out these messages. And basically, it's like, on this contract, vote yes, and your MRA won't be removed. I think, TC, if you want to share a screenshot of it, you should go for it. And, basically, let's now look at the language, okay? The language in the contract that we had in 2018 up until now has the same exact language in the MRA as the TA that we're about to vote on. There were 0 changes. And what happened in 2018? MRAs got slashed. And UPSers experienced, on average, anywhere from like a $5 to $7 wage cut during those 5 years. So what does this tell us? If it could happen then, it could happen again. And I think that that needs to be exposed. And of course, like, we're being told, like, okay, like, we just have to take Sean O'Brien's word, like, he pinky promised, like, don't worry, guys. But come on now, a word isn't good enough for us. And even in this text, it's emphasizing under this new agreement. But again, 0 change to the wording, nothing at all. And I've also heard, like, okay, well, if our MRAs get cut, we're going to nationally grieve it. This is something Sean O'Brien has said. So it's like, whoa. You guys are already planning for when it goes south? Like, my confidence in this is very low. And we only get this opening once every 5 years to try and demand for better language. We got to seize this now instead of just voting yes and enduring another 5 years where we'll definitely get a wage cut. And the other thing that is related to this is these infographics that the IBT has been making. They have one that says, that basically from 1982 to 2022, part-time wage growth has increased $7.25 per hour. And that the Teamsters TA gives more money to part-time workers in just 5 years than UPS paid part-time workers over 40 years. And that from 2023 to 2027, our part-time wage growth will be $7.50 an hour. So basically, when you strip away everything that's relative, then of course, looking at these numbers, you go from 1 apple to 5 apples. Okay, increase. But what's really going on here? We know that actually the wages in the 80s that they're referencing here, that is $7 lower, gave us more purchasing power than what we would have at the end of this 5 years. So we're actually going backwards, not forwards. Like you guys explained sort of on your last call, under this capitalist system, we go through boom and bust. That's just how it works. These capitalists have print money that we don't have. They make inflation go up. We have ongoing wars. So that means that our gas and our food and our shelter continue to increase, and our wages just haven't kept up with it. We have public schools closing left and right. Banks are crashing. Our outside world needs to be taken into consideration. Um, and it's just, completely misleading for them to just strip that all away in this breakdown. And even the fact that, okay, sure, this TA has given us more money in 5 years than over 40 years. That's not something to be, that's awful. It should be way higher. And even this part time wage growth from 2023 to 2027, which is forecasted for 750, based on what I was just explaining with the MRAs, it's not even clear or guaranteed that we will see that increase over 5 years. We might actually endure cuts. And basically,
Just to add to
yeah,
your knowledge, and you have a very good depth of knowledge, and you're
thanks.
very good at laying out your argument for your stance, and I agree with most of the
Yeah.
points you've made. But I want to add to that, and when I
Mm-hmm.
actually came on back in '95,
Yeah.
um, I was having a discussion with somebody recently, and they said, "Well, what do you think, like ideally, would be actually a good pay for part timers and full timers?" And I said, when I got my job at UPS back in '95, we made double minimum wage.
Yeah,
Let me put
exactly.
it. I'm not going to say $8 because, oh well, you're making so much more. No, no, no. Let's put it into a context with, as you're saying, everything around us and the cost of living and such. Okay, when I got my job as a part timer, I made double minimum wage coming in right off the bat. So if you were to take that and apply it to today's contract, our part timers should be making $30 an hour coming in off the road, and then full timers should be making 60 at least.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and people are shocked when you put out those numbers, but it's because corporate greed has slowly declined our average pay wage, right? And
Mm-hmm.
it's been so incremental, so slow that it's been hard to notice. But we get to this point, fast forward, and you look back at those numbers that I was talking about years ago, and if you were to apply it to today's wage, then it would only make sense that, and look, if you look at prevailing wage is way above that. What is it, in the 90s now? And they're working for the government, making big wages on big projects, and they're not holding back on paying those people. If the government can pay those people, a company like UPS, which is run way better, more efficiently, they're some of the best strategists out there in the world. They can be sharing the wealth with us, and it won't hurt their numbers hardly at all. They'll still be making major profits more than ever before. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I wanted to add to that.
That was a great point, and I'm glad you stepped in because it really helps round out our argument and our claim on the topic of wages. I think within the TA, as it stands, there were a lot of issues that were presented as strike issues that clearly, as I explained earlier, is not happening right now. That's stuff like with the PVDs, the grievance procedure, penalty pay, subcontracting, the list goes on. Many workers who are part of Teamsters Mobilized put their collective time, energy, and brains together to create a document where we went line by line on things in the contract and language that we think it should be instead, which I encourage people to go to, and can be a place where you can kind of see, like, more of the technical details or the argument for why we're voting no. I think what I want to do right now is actually directly respond to some of your points that you're bringing up about how much politicians make in comparison to us. Um, you know, every aspect of our lives is political. And I think, we're often told to shy away from that, don't talk about politics at the dinner table, etc. And those ideas come from our exploiters, so that way it can be obscured of like what's really going on. And I think for us, we need to look at class society squarely, what our role is in it as workers, and how we can, eventually bring it to its knees, like through a revolution. We're not going to live in our exploitation will not end by just electing new officers in our current system and hoping that change can happen from within the inside. That's just not going to be the case, and that has to be put on the table. Let's take AOC as like a particular example. She makes upwards of 174,000 and up a year, while your average minimum wage worker makes maybe 25 to 30,000 a year, maybe even less in some states. She was a big cheerleader at some of these New York City UPS practice pickets, sort of trying to assimilate herself as being almost a member of the working class, being a representative. And the wool will not be pulled over our eyes. We know that both the Democrats and the Republicans unanimously squashed the railroad strike just for some meager sick days. The reason that UPS has billion dollar profits is because they exploit us and give us just enough money to, live another day, show up to work, maybe have some kids. Those kids then become workers. But even raising that family is a big struggle. It's not like they're really giving us enough to live large. That's not the case. And these profits, these billion-dollar profits, don't just go towards like Carol Tomei or these CEOs like mall money to just, ball out on cars and yachts, and maybe that happens to a small degree. But what's really happening is our profits, not our profits, UPS's profits off of our stolen, off of our hard work and off of our backs, is being put into forces that continue to squash us as an entire class outside of our workplace. So what do I mean? These profits are going to Wall Street. They're fattening up investors like BlackRock, to name one, and lobbying politicians. Let's start with the banks. The banks make a buck off of apparently being our piggy bank. They also leech off of us with very skyrocketing interest rates and loans that we will never be able to really realistically pay back. And we also know that if we went to the banks right now and everybody wanted to pull out all their money, they don't got that money. A depression would be caused. So the banks make a killing off of our book. BlackRock, as that example, has their money in weapon manufacturing and ICE detainment camps. For the politicians, we're already starting to get down that road, but they work against us all the time. Let's take one example. Okay, we know that the one role of the government is to sort of lead our branches of military. They go into, aside from the officer schools, like just for recruiting, they go to a lot of poor and working class neighborhoods. They recruit people because life just seems so bleak here. You might as well take this career that has all this sort of valor attached to it. You can also get your student loans paid off if you survive. And soldiers get so perversely exploited in these very brutal wars that really don't benefit us or keep us safe at home. They actually make all of our resources skyrocket like gas. And, wars are really just a game for kind of all these, rulers in all these different countries to just play a mad dash for who has control over the reserve currency or who has control over oil, wanting to split up the world in all these different parts where they can keep the international working class down. So that's like a little picture there of what these politicians are up to and doing with all the money that we were supposed to get while we were at work. And then we have also, these politicians, this military is then also used against us whenever there's any political movements that are happening. We've seen that in the during the Vietnam War, or more recently during the Black Lives Matters protests, or any kind of really big strike that has happened. These politicians are there to squash us through the National Guard, calling martial law, tear gassing, beating us up. So, we're getting shorted when we go to work, but also that money that already short amount of money that we're getting is also getting pulled out our back pocket and being put into all these forces that are outside of our workplace, but impact our lives every single day and us as a class as a whole. So, but there's a really, really special potential here. We are exploited. We are at the bottom, but we can be the gravediggers of this capitalist society. We can transform it. We can, through revolution and studying all the past mistakes and lessons learned from movements around the world, we can gain clarity on how to continue that long and torturous road. And it definitely is a struggle. It's not a pipe dream, but myself and I know many other workers are sick of just being like, we've struggled this far. We've been exploited since the dawn of age. We can still just keep being exploited. Let's just keep it as it is. And, I'm sick and tired of that. And I know many of you out there also are. And, one other observation that I want to shed light on is, our Sean O'Brien, our president of the, Teamsters, I'm pretty sure I heard him say many, many times over this whole entire year, how greedy these corporations are, how much, they leech off of us as workers. So, we were being told that all year long, like, here's the boss and here's the workers. The bosses and companies are very greedy. Both TDU and IBT had put out a lot of materials about how much we actually should be making. And some of these points that I brought up, not they didn't bring up anything about revolution, but they did bring up the basic fact that, hey, look, UPS spends this much more money in, the banks and whatnot than paying us. They did put that forward. So we all were told that stuff. Then we get this TA that falls short of what we actually deserve. So now there's a section of the workforce who are coming forward and saying, hey, like, you guys filled us up with, like, all these facts of, like, the potential we have as workers. And now we're being called greedy for asking for a better TA. So this is very strategic, very, very strategically being done, where before it was workers and companies greedy. Now it is workers against workers, and one section of the workers are greedy for fighting for a better friggin' TA. So that's an observation I've noticed. I want to put it on the table, and I think it's an important one.
Is there anything that people can do aside from voting no, obviously, but to kind of give you guys a shout out or give you some support, let you know that they're in it with you, anything like that?
Yeah, of course. We do have a website, teamstersmobilize.com. And if you go to the Vote No campaign tab, that's where you can see everything surrounding our movement. There is a survey right at the top. We're going to need a lot of mass initiative and participation in figuring out what exactly is the legitimate language that we want to be putting forward to the IBT in the event that this is voted down and we return back to the tables. We need to be providing a lot of leadership as workers, and so we have an open call for that. There are a group of us who we do go through who fills out those surveys and are reaching out to people one-on-one, and then from there, if conversation is sparked, then we can bring you even further into sort of our internal organizing and how, if people really want to join up and take a part in what we're putting out, reach out to us. I don't want to give out my personal phone number on this call, but if you do fill out that survey, a worker, we will reach out to you and bring you in. And we're also, ultimately want to stay organized beyond just this vote no campaign. And, whatever way the dust settles when all of this is done, there will definitely be lots of outrages that we will need to organize around. And whatever contract we get, we are going to have to work tooth and nail to call out all the times that it will get violated. We're in it for the long haul.
And I mean, that's what it exists for. It's the standard by which we're expected to work, but we're expected to also be what's the word I'm looking for? Respected, right? It's the guidelines of what they can and cannot do, either to us or in light of our work. They're not allowed to take it. They're not allowed to give
Mm-hmm.
it away. I do have I do have a problem with the PVDs, and I've never liked that. We had a system in place long before the PVDs that worked just fine. It could be rough at Christmas, but a lot of guys really came to rely on those extra funds every Christmas time, so it wasn't that bad. But that being said, I mean, I think if we get a no vote, and I think there's a good chance we do,
Mm-hmm.
in light of the fact that we voted no on the last one, but there was a loophole that kept it in place, and that one wasn't near as controversial as this one. This one is both controversial, and it's been all over the media, so everybody knows about it. It's more publicized than it's ever been, and I think people really, they know the math, right? Like you've done. I
Yeah.
don't think people are idiots in general, and they know how much more they're struggling than they have been before, and they're not buying anything different. And they feel that, and they feel where they should be in relation to that. And I agree with you. I don't think this contract really gets us there. And they really undercut us. They gave us just enough to where it's like, do I really want to fight that? But it's still not great. It could be better. It actually should be better. But the big one's the pension for me.
Yeah.
And I'm aggravated that our own union has said no concessions were given over and over, and then we keep finding these holes, as you've said. So, Colleen, I want to thank you for coming on today and sharing your message, your campaign, and your site with us, that people could get involved. They can know that there's others out there who are involved, who feel the same way they do, and they can also reach out to others and kind of share that message. And I'm grateful for you. I'm grateful for your passion and your
Mm-hmm.
involvement. And I hope and pray that you will continue down that path, because it's people like you who make a difference in this union and in the world in general. So again, thank you. And is there any final thoughts you'd like to leave us with?
Yeah, I think the last thing that I kind of want to focus on or share is the repression that workers are facing who are standing up and being pretty public with this no vote. Um, I'm not shocked. I'm not surprised. I obviously have been talking to a lot of workers and building relationships, and clearly have a grasp of kind of the working class struggle since the 19th century. Not an expert, but I know a little bit, and that has come from collective study and from the shoulders that we stand upon. So I know that anytime a worker is trying to go against the grain or go against the tide, there's always going to be a force ready to squash us as soon as we take that step. So I say the following with not being shocked, but it needs to be publicly said. So basically, what's going on is people who are flying for the Vote No campaign across the country are getting harassed by BAs, business agents, for those who aren't part of a union and are watching this, and the company alike. Basically, our NLRB and NLRA rights are getting violated and steamrolled as if they don't even exist. And listen, like I said, I'm not naive. We live in a society where our federal law places innocent people on death row for things that they never even did. And the federal law was never intended to benefit the working people. We constantly have to defend ourselves against things that we shouldn't have to be. We always are, can never take the offensive step without retaliation. So, so even though we have these rights, I'm fully aware that the ruling class gets to decide when they want to or not want to follow it, and dominantly they don't follow it. So, but so back to kind of the concrete things. We were out at Visalia, which is where TC works. It's in the NorCal region. Myself and another steward went out to Flyer. I haven't said it this call, but I also have now become a steward at this point. And yeah, we went out to Flyer by the Gates for every single shift. And we were able to stay out by the gates for a little bit. And then, the company comes out. They're like, you guys aren't supposed to be on the property. We explain how that's actually not the case, and we are. But then they threatened to call the cops on us. Business agents also showed up, different officials within the IBT leadership. And they basically, more or less, this is not a verbatim quote, but it is essentially the point that was made, was that the company is trying to encourage a yes vote, and that it's confusing for workers, and that the union needs to be in consistency with the company.
So
That's pretty
that was
much
our
what he
own
said.
business agents.
Yeah, exactly. And so, then there was another officer who did try and stick up for us and say, like, what? They're gonna, like, if they go off the property, they're just gonna get hit by cars. So, slightly appreciated that, but ultimately everybody still just cowed down. Everybody being the security guard and the union just cowed down to the company. And, we were like, we also don't want to get arrested for this. I think if the cops did show up and we filmed it, that would ultimately be some really awful PR for the company. But we also don't want to deter other workers. That could easily be perceived as us being actually very hostile or something that happened, and when that's not the case. We're just passing out flyers. But anywho, so not wanting to push it too much, we go, but we also don't want to leave, so we go all the way to the edge of the parking lot, like right before this main road, which is already, not ideal. Now we have to pass flyers like hand to car versus face to face. About an hour and a half of that, finally, the security guard comes running up and has the gall to tell us that we're still on the property and that we're being watched, and again, that they're going to call the cops on us. The only other option for this area, and I know TC knows this, but to illustrate for others, if we step off the property, it's a busy, busy road, and then it's just like cornfields. Like, this is in the valley part of California, so there's a lot of farming is basically the terrain. So they want us to go out into the median to pass out flyers. Nobody's going to stop for that. So basically, the point is they don't want us flying for the no vote at all. So they're saying, like, just go off the property. But there's nowhere for us to go. And, the cops never showed, and we never backed down because we know. And, okay, so they violated these rights that we're supposed to have. We could go down the legal route, but like I said, the law does not work in our favor. We don't have time to try and sue the company and the union for, going. We don't have time to enter that whole procedure. So I think the point is that if more of us continue to publicly speak out about how we are wrongfully being squashed to be flying for this campaign, we're going to make a fool out of these people, out of these forces, being the union and the company. At least for our officers at my local 70, we have been pretty public from the jump that we were going to be flying for no vote and spreading word. And like I said at the beginning of this episode, we're not here to half-ass it. So we're going for it. And, our union officials do disagree, but we have at least been given sort of the green light, and like the understanding is there that we're allowed to do this. But that is not how it's going across the country. But I also wanted to, acknowledge that at least, our local is doing what they're supposed to be doing, which is letting us have this sort of, democratic process, democratic with air quotes, but, we are Teamsters are supposed to be fighters. We're supposed to be organizers. Like, if we've been, told all year long to be like a fighting force, so now we are. And, what's up,
We
guys?
shouldn't be fighting within the
Yeah.
union. We should be well represented. What does represent mean? That means they don't force an opinion on us, right? That means we give them our opinion, not the other way around. And that's the way it should work. You said it's a democratic process. And so if there's a problem with the system, if we've got our representatives telling us, almost advertising for what they believe we need to do, vote yes, vote yes. This is the historic. How many times have you heard the word historic in relation to the contract lately? I've never heard it so many times, probably in my life. But it shouldn't be that way to me. My personal opinion is they should be going, hey guys, so here's what we did in negotiations. Here's what we agreed to because we thought it was good. Now here it is for you to read. Tell us what you think.
Mm-hmm.
Here's what you should think. Problem. That's a serious broken problem in our union right now, and it needs to be fixed. I don't know if that means changing out the personnel or simply maybe things like this podcast somebody will catch wind of it and they'll start listening. They'll realize, oh yeah, we've been doing that and we need to stop. But whatever it takes, it does need to stop because we become weaker and the companies become stronger when we're divided, and we can't afford that. So again, thank you, Colleen. Thank you for telling us about that. Yeah, we needed to know that that's happening. And so feel free, again, to everybody listening, if you feel like this is not a good contract, you don't have to be told what to think. There are others out here. We're independent thinkers. The union is an independent thinker. That means they work for us. We get to think for ourselves, and you get to vote your conscience. And we, as being people who think it's not good enough and it could be better, at least a little bit better, minimum, but it could be way better, and it really should be. We still respect. If you don't think so, if you think this is a great thing, we expect you to vote yes. We're not telling you what to vote. We're telling you, look at it closer and don't just listen to your representatives. Think for yourself. Look at it. Are there holes? We see holes, so we want you to consider voting no. I stand with Colleen, and I thank you again for coming on today.
Yeah. Yeah, of course. And I think you ask a really important question, TC, which is, what do we do about this union kind of feeling a bit broken? Is it changing heads in leadership? Is it this podcast? I think this podcast is a great first step. But ultimately, what I think we really need is an organization of, militant workers across trades, across industries, to join up and start realizing, like, hey, like, we have some similarities that are happening here. This means something. And basically, in the early 20s, in the 20s and 30s, there were organizations like the Trade Union Unity League and the Trade Union Education League that basically were formed on this precipice that, there was a lot of class collaboration happening between the union and the companies, and there needed to be a force that could take that on. But that doesn't mean not participating in union life. We do need to work in these unions. and we have to try and push as much as we can from below. I do think that we also do need people in leadership who understand that and can kind of help help sort of unlock some of the obstacles right now that prevent us from below being able to really lead the charge here. So there needs to be both. We need to strengthen the pressure from below and sort of concentrate and centralize our forces. But we also need to not see like all leadership as just completely bad. We do need to strengthen that up as well, and ultimately like work together. And it's not a matter of like rank and file versus leadership. It's a matter of like which politics and which side are people taking. Obviously, when Ron Kerry was a president, he made sure that strike happened. He supported it and he pushed it forward. He did end up getting retaliated against, but I think that helps illustrate it. Or, the 1934 strike, which Teamsters are very proud of, that happened because the local president at the time went against the international and saw that a strike was necessary. And it fomented into almost a general strike with workers coming in from all these other industries and truckers in Minneapolis. So that moment that a lot of Teamsters speak about as having a lot of respect and admiration for came from, there was power from below, but also that leadership was willing to stick their neck outs too and ride the momentum that the workers from below had. So I think, basically what needs to happen is we have to kind of, after all this dust settles, really start concentrating our forces and building up an organization of militant workers that currently does not exist. And I look for, I say that as a public call. I also know that all eyes are on us while we're watching this. I know that the high ups in the union are going to be watching this as I speak it. I know the company is, but I'm not afraid. And I know other workers aren't as well. This is about far more than just our own individual experiences. We have a lot of ground to make up from the past few decades where workers' struggles and our consciousness has just been completely plummeted. So if I get retaliated against for, speaking on this podcast, but the words spoken help carry that torch further for others, that's the whole point. And that's lessons that I've learned from revolutionaries. And, Fred Hampton of the Black Panther Party had said himself, it kind of changes. It's either you can kill a revolutionary, but you can't kill a revolution, or you can jail a revolutionary, but you can't jail a revolution. And that basically illustrates that point that individual comrades will, can be picked off and have been. But if we can keep the momentum moving decade to decade, generation to generation, learn our lessons, that's kind of the key and the orientation that we need to have. And I thought I would close out with that. And we got to keep struggling together.
I agree. No, we're not alone. No, and they're coming. More and more people are coming out of the woodworks, talking about how they feel, and like you said, the union's it's the rebel power, right? So
Yeah, it has a long
power,
history, and we need to, we need to like light life back into it.
Thank you guys for listening today, and thank you. I appreciate all of you. I know Colleen appreciates all of you, and all we want is for you guys not to fear thinking for yourselves, standing up for yourself, and being able to say it out loud. That's what empowers us, and we stand behind you. Thank you again.